Can you feel that, buddy? Huh? Huh? Huh?
We got all of this icy hot right now, guys. If you put this a little bit on you, it makes it burn like crazy.
So if you think design and branding is just about what your logo looks like, what colors you use, or perhaps your font, prepare to be amazed and even a little overwhelmed. The game is much deeper and complex. It's all engineered, and it's full sensory. So let's flash back to this morning as you were getting ready for work. Did you register that scalpy tingle your shampoo sent to your senses to tell you, quote unquote, it's working? Or how about as you got dressed? Did you waft in that country fresh breeze scent telling you your clothes are indeed fresh? How about as you got into your new car to drive to work? Did you know that that new car smell is actually fake? Did you notice the way your door closes and sound was actually designed to be that way? Well, it was, and it all matters. So way back in the day when no two products were the same, products back then didn't have the kind of major competition they have now. There wasn't a million choices when it came to milk. There was just milk. Now this is where you want to go. The future of branding will evolve beyond the MSP into the holistic selling proposition, or HSP. HSP brands are not only those that anchor themselves in tradition, but also adopt characteristics of religious sensory experiences to leverage the concept of sensory branding as a holistic way of spreading the news. Each holistic brand has its own identity, one that is expressed in every message, shape, symbol, ritual, and tradition, just as religion does today.
You know, I drove through a lot of towns, a lot of small towns. And they all had two things in common. They had a courthouse and they had a church. On top of the church, you got a cross, and on top of the courthouse, they'd have a flag. Flags, crosses, crosses, flags. Those arches have a lot in common with those buildings. A building with a cross on top, what is that? It's a gathering place where decent, wholesome people come together and they share values protected by that American flag. It could be said that that beautiful building flanked by those arches signifies more or less the same thing.
In the 1980s, one of Belgium's coastline tram routes introduced new trams to replace outdated and rattling models. Although the new models were much loved, there was one significant problem. Accident records in the first year after its introduction skyrocketed. So what was the issue? Analysis of these incidents indicated that the approaching tram was so silent that pedestrians were unaware of the dangers. Eventually, they redesigned to new cars to make synthetically produced sounds to alert pedestrians. And this isn't the only time something like this has ever happened in history. Back in 2008, a young boy was hit by a Prius because he couldn't hear it coming.
Prius?
I bought 7 of them. I got my whole crew driving them. They're real quiet. Good for sneaking up on motherfuckers.
As the tram and Prius examples illustrate, sensory information can be instrumental in preventing accidents. What about this case study from Method Soap? As written about in their book, The Method Method, upon introduction of their early lines of dish soap, customers were complaining that the product didn't work because there wasn't enough bubbles being made from the soap. In this case, bubbles were perceived as a sign of a functioning product. So once they reformulated the product to be sudsier, sales skyrocketed back up. Or consider this example with IBM. IBM learned the hard way how important sound is. When it introduced its Model 6750 electronic typewriter in the 1970s, it was completely silent. Typists rejected it until IBM added back some artificial sound. Would we still perceive Alka-Seltzer as effective if you dropped in the tablet and there was no signature plop, plop, fizz, fizz bubbles? The above examples illustrate that the final success or failure of a product is dependent on which ways all the human senses are stimulated. Now that we know how things can go horribly wrong, let's take a look at when they go right. Here's how the senses have been used to create more experiential products. Thinking about sensory effects is an established practice in some consumer industries such as food, cosmetics, and hospitality. For example, Hershey's has long been aware that the tactile pleasure people get from unwrapping the foil around a kiss transforms an ordinary piece of chocolate into something special. Harley-Davidson famously tried for years to get protection for the purr of their V-twin motorcycle engine, only to be locked in legal limbo for so long that they gave up and withdrew the request. Launched in 2004, Magnum introduced a limited edition series of ice cream, Magnum 5 Senses, in which each of the 5 different ice creams was dedicated to the senses. The Magnum Sound, for example, was filled with pieces of caramelized sugar that produced a sound while the ice cream was eaten. Just look at how suggestive the packaging is. Or consider this. At the end of the 1990s, Daimler Chrysler established an entirely new department devoted solely to developing the sound of its car doors. 10 engineers were assigned the task of creating the perfect sound for the opening and closing of the doors. In another example, Kellogg's hired a Danish commercial music laboratory to create a unique crunch for its cornflakes that no other cereal has. The day the company introduced the new sounding cereal, its market share increased. Instead of marketing a cereal that relied on 2 senses, sight and taste, Kellogg's could appeal to 2 more, sound and touch. By appealing to more senses, the company broadened its platform and sold more products. Now take a look at your smartphone you might be watching this on. For electronic products, a major part of the functional feedback does not occur naturally, but needs to be designed. Because the function is mainly performed in a virtual environment, it is the designer's task to provide the feedback that makes you understand what is happening. Designers created the beeping sounds you hear every time you touch a button, and the sound the phone makes when someone gives you a call. This plays out in many different ways. A British supermarket chain owned by Walmart removed the wrapping from its house brand of toilet paper so that customers can compare its texture to leading brands. The opportunity to touch the product resulted in soaring sales.
I just want you to touch it. Just touch it, come on.
Another example is Olay Regenerous thermal facial products, which are engineered to generate heat upon application, although heat isn't necessary to their functioning to signal that they are working. It is revealing to note that a whopping 59% of consumers prefer their Coke in a glass bottle, even though it's the same drink when sold in cans or plastic. Take these 2 bags of chips for instance. On this side we have a bag of chips in a shiny bag, and on the other, a fat-free bag of chips in a matte bag. So what's going on here? The shiny bag connotes greasiness, as the bag could be perceived as oily, bringing up associations that often go along with bad-for-you foods, while the matte bag is perceived as lacking oil and therefore looks like a more healthier, wanted option. Or take this quote-unquote innovation from Coors Beer Company. I'm not sure if they forgot that your hand is able to tell when something is cold, but in this case to signal consumers the beer is cold and frosty. The blue mountain on the can turns blue, an icy, cool color. The sense of smell is one of the most powerful senses because it's one of the only ones we can't turn off. And yet, fewer than 3% of Fortune 1000 companies have even given a thought to establishing a unique aroma for their brands. By contrast, Singapore Airlines did this in the beginning in the 1990s when it introduced its specially designed aroma. It was included in the flight attendant's perfume, on the hot towels ordered before takeoff, and it permeated the fleet of planes. Anyone who's had the total Singapore experience will instantly recognize the subtle aroma. That's air. Here's land. Buyers of automobiles constantly cite the new car smell as one of the most gratifying aspects of their purchase. In reality, there is no such thing as new car smell.
Within Ford, we do a significant amount of odor testing to ensure that we satisfy the greatest number of customers.
As the car leaves the production line, workers use aerosol cans to spray the aroma all over the interior. In one case, Rolls-Royce spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to reproduce the distinct smell of its 1965 Silver Cloud. The older cars were made of natural materials such as wood, leather, and wool. The new ones, made of plastic, metal, and foam, simply didn't smell right.
Do you see what I see?
Now, you see it. Now you see it.
All right, guys, so again, I want to thank you for watching Stargist again today. This was an awesome episode for me to put together. Again, my mission here is to keep your inner kid alive by helping you make the things you want to make a reality. So to note, 5% of all proceeds will be going to funding design programs for kids because I want to fund the next wave of innovators. That's right, I want to make this world a better place, and with your help, I can. So please subscribe, please share. I love you guys, and I'll be back next week.